All right, today we're diving headfirst into the high-stakes world of the operating room. We're going to look at a drug that's basically a biochemical emergency brake, a total lifesaver that comes with its own wild story and a pretty serious list of risks.
So let me ask you something. Imagine a patient on the operating table, life on the line. There's a powerful drug flowing through their veins, one that's absolutely essential for the surgery to even happen. But the second that surgery is over, that same drug becomes a deadly threat. How do you just flip a switch and turn it off? That's the big question we're tackling today.
And this whole dilemma plays out most dramatically during open heart surgery. It's a crazy situation where doctors have to intentionally put the body into a dangerous state and then reverse it with absolute pinpoint precision. To do surgery on a heart, you literally have to stop it. And to do that, you have to redirect all of the patient's blood through a heart-lung machine. The hero of this whole first act is a drug called heparin. It's a super powerful blood thin that stops clots from forming in the machine's tubes, which you can imagine would be completely catastrophic. Without heparin, modern heart surgery just wouldn't be a thing. Okay, so the surgery is a success. The heart's restarted, awesome. But now that life-saving heparin is a huge liability. The blood can't clot, which means the patient could just bleed out. You need an off switch, an antidote, and you need it to work not in hours, but right now. So where on earth do you find a perfect antidote like that? Well, the answer isn't something cooked up in a futuristic lab. It actually comes from one of the most surprising places you could possibly imagine. Yep, you heard me right. The solution to this massive medical problem comes from salmon sperm. It's just this incredible example of biochemistry where nature, it turns out, already had the perfect tool for the job. And this stuff is called protamine sulfate. It's not a drug in the traditional sense. It doesn't really mess with the body's systems. It's a direct chemical counterpunch. Think of it less like a key fitting a lock and more like a molecular sponge designed for one mission and one mission only. Find heparin and take it out. So how does it work so perfectly? Well, the secret is super simple. It comes down to a basic rule of chemistry you probably learned in school. Opposites attract. Protamine and heparin are a total mismatch, which, in this case, makes them a perfect match.
It's actually really straightforward. Heparin is an acidic molecule with this huge, strong negative charge. Protamine, on the other hand, is super basic, giving it a powerful positive charge. They're basically two incredibly strong, perfectly matched magnets just floating around in the bloodstream, destined to find each other. And here's the play-by-play of what happens. The moment protamine is injected, its positive molecules basically go on a search and destroy mission for those negative heparin molecules. They find each other, they lock on instantly, and they form this stable, totally inactive new molecule. This new thing has zero effect on blood clotting. The heparin is neutralized, and just like that, the body's natural clotting ability is back online.
This incredible speed and precision make protamine an absolute must-have in a bunch of different medical emergencies where every single second counts. Okay, so its number one job is definitely after heart surgery, but it's also the emergency button they push for an accidental heparin overdose, or say a patient is on a heparin drip for a blood clot and they suddenly start bleeding uncontrollably. They use it then too. It's also used after things like dialysis, and it can even partially reverse a whole different class of blood thinners. But this is where our story takes a bit of a turn. Protamine might be the hero, but it's a flawed hero. This life-saving antidote has its own dark side, and it's a powerful tool that you have to treat with a ton of respect. Yeah, using protamine isn't as simple as just injecting the cure and calling it a day. The very thing that makes it so powerful is also what makes it so risky. Doctors have to be incredibly careful, watching the patient constantly for a whole range of really serious reactions. So the first major risk is all about speed. You have to give a dose of protamine over a minimum of 10 minutes. Why? Because if you push it in any faster, it can cause the patient's blood pressure to just plummet, their heart rate to slow way down, and in the worst case scenario, it can cause a total cardiovascular collapse. When it comes to protamine, speed is your enemy. On top of that, some people are just way more likely to have a severe, life-threatening allergic reaction. Since it comes from fish, a fish allergy is a huge red flag, obviously. But then there are some stranger ones. Certain kinds of insulin actually contain protamine, so diabetic patients using them might already have antibodies. And, weirdly enough, men who've had a vasectomy can also have antibodies that react to it, putting them at higher risk too. And now for the biggest paradox of all. Remember how protamine works? It cancels out heparin.
Well, what happens when all the heparin is gone? Any extra protamine just floating around starts acting like a weak blood thinner itself. So if you give too much of the cure, you can actually make the bleeding worse. How crazy is that?
And you'd think after the dose is given, you're in the clear, right? Not so fast. There's this tricky little thing called heparin rebound. Hours after everything seems fine, heparin that was kind of hiding out in the body's tissues can leak back into the blood, and the patient starts bleeding all over again.
So, what does this all add up to? It means that for the doctors and nurses on the front lines, using this drug is like walking a tightrope. It is a constant, incredibly delicate balancing act. They have to nail the dose perfectly. Not a drop more, not a drop less. Too little, and the patient keeps bleeding. Too much, and the antidote itself causes bleeding or a bad reaction. The margin for error here is just tiny.
So in the end, using Protamine successfully really boils down to three things: meticulous dosing, slow and careful administration over at least 10 minutes, and watching the patient like a hawk, second by second, for any sign of trouble. It's a huge testament to the skill it takes to practice medicine at this level.
And that kind of leaves us with one last thought. Protamine sulfate really is a silver bullet for a very specific problem. But its story is such a powerful reminder that in medicine, even the most perfect-seeming solutions can have a hidden, dangerous edge, turning every decision into a calculated risk. Makes you wonder, doesn't it? How many other miracle cures out there are walking that same fine line?